West Ham against Palace on Saturday, which means I can only be joined by one man, Dan, or you might know him better as HLTCO over on Twitter. Dan, two clubs, our clubs, complete opposite ends of the morale scale, if you like. One fan base really down and upset, the other one really happy and excited. Let's talk about your club first of all, Crystal Palace. How's things going?
Pretty mad, to be honest. I mean, I actually did a podcast this morning. I don't know if anyone listens to it who listens to this. It's called Football Between the Lines. It's with a Spurs fan, so probably not. But you never know. And we were actually talking about the fact that Crystal Palace is 16 games unbeaten in all competitions across the back end of last season and the start of this. And the fact that it isn't really making as much in the way of headlines as you would probably expect for a team outside the top six. You know, for that run to encompass a Charity Shield and an FA Cup win as well, you know, we've started this season. They haven't been straightforward fixtures. Chelsea away and Forest at home, which obviously had a bit of spice to it. And, you know, even Sunderland at the weekend, they're a good side, Sunderland. They're not what you would expect for a newly promoted team. They matched us up pretty well physically. And we had the South London derby against Millwall on Tuesday. So, yeah, 16 unbeaten, you can't really knock it. And, yeah, we certainly go into this weekend's game with a degree of confidence in ourselves, for sure.
In regards to the summer then, it was a hectic one for Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
It felt like a quiet one up until the very end when everything sort of kicked off a little bit because you were sort of just waiting to find out some decisions from people who don't play football. But what was your take on everything? First of all, you had the CAS ruling that went against you. And then you had the sort of Mark Gay transfer saga, and then you had your own transfer window to contend with as well. You got Glasner, who felt like he was almost threatening the club a little bit, which is you sell him, I'm off. What was your take on everything as a Palace fan?
Well, I mean, to go back to the UEFA CAS stuff, I mean, it feels to me like the vast majority of football fans were on Palace's side with this. You know, it was frustrating. There's no way around it. You don't sign a piece of paper on March the 1st. You don't know you've got to sign for a competition you're not in. And then you get barred from said competition before the draw's even taken place. And I don't want to go over old ground, but it was incredibly stressful and pretty much turned every Palace fan into a mini lawyer for a couple of months. Obviously, the appeal didn't go in our favour. It means we've been knocked down to the UEFA Conference, but it's still European football. And then you look at the window. I mean, Abiri Eze going to Arsenal for 67.5 million. You get 5 years of service out of him. He wins you the FA Cup. He goes for 400% profit and with everyone's best wishes, and it's his next stage of his career. The Mark Gay situation was a very different one because, you know, you've got a player there that isn't prepared to sign a new contract, who's out of contract himself in less than 12 months. And as much as the financially sound thing to do would be to get 35 plus 5 million, with the first season in European football, with defensive solidarity being such a key part of the success we've enjoyed under Oliver Glasner, and with him being a player that Oliver Glasner felt was absolutely essential to our chances of success this season, I think in the end, it reached the right conclusion. I mean, there is this scenario where with Oliver Glasner having less than a year to run on his deal and Mark Gay the same, we're potentially going to have to replace our greatest ever manager and captain at the same time with no money, which obviously is an unenviable task. But I think, and I've said this to a couple of people, we're just riding the wave at the moment. I think football fans, particularly in the modern era, you know, you go down this route of worrying about balance sheets and PSR and everything else. People forget to sort of live in the moment a little bit. You know, you get too caught up with 5-year plans or 10-year plans and where you see the club going. But because of the European campaign, which is the first one we've ever been in, and because of the squad we've got and the manager we've got, we're sort of being forced to live in the moment. And it's quite nice. You know, it's nice when you're living in the moment and you're 16 unbeaten. Less so if we go on a 3-game losing streak. But yeah, for now, I'm trying to not think too much about the summer of 2026 and instead just try and enjoy this last year of Mark Gay being at the club and potentially delivering another piece of silverware, because I think there's a genuine chance that we can go deep into the competition, if not win it completely.
So, with all said and done, though, were you happy with your transfer window? Like you said, a big loss with Eze, then a big decision with Mark Gay, and it looks like you bought a big talent in Yeremy Pino. Were you happy with everything that Crystal Palace done?
I think in the end, yes. I mean, it was a strange window because we brought in Walter Benitez, who made his debut in goal against Millwall on Tuesday, saved 2 penalties in the shootout. But obviously, Dean Henderson is the undisputed number one. He's been fantastic for us since he came in. Borna Sosa came in from Ajax, but again, he's more of a utility player, sort of there as a backup to Tyreek Mitchell. And other than that, there wasn't a great deal of business being done. Obviously, Ibira Eze leaves. We bring in Pino for 1/3 of the fee, a 22-year-old with all sorts of potential and talent, a fantastic player in the making there. We also brought in Uche from Getafe on deadline day. He plays in all sorts of positions. He can play centre mid, he can play as a 10, he can play on the left wing, he can play up front. So that positional versatility should suit us down to the ground. And JD Canvo as well, who made his debut on Tuesday, a 19-year-old centre-back, came from Toulouse, and honestly looked like an absolute Rolls Royce. I'm sure you've seen it with West Ham players. You always, jury's out for a few weeks while they're finding their feet, but this guy's come in and dislodged Chris Richards from the starting 11 in Oliver Glasner's mind, which is no mean feat, whether it's a cup game or not, and just looked every inch top quality. So I think overall, once the dust does settle on the window, we have to be pleased with it. I think that the timing of things and the way that it played out led it to be more stressful than it potentially needed to be. But there was very little we could do about the Mark Gay Liverpool thing because of the lateness of the bid that they put in the first place. So all's well that ends well in many senses.
In regards to Oliver Glasner with his contract, is there a reason that he's got less than a year to go? And is there any talk of him signing a new contract?
The reason is that he won't sign a new one, or at least hasn't yet said that he will. I don't necessarily blame him. If you look at his managerial CV, he took a club called Lask to, I think, 4th in their domestic division, went to Wolfsburg, qualified them for the Champions League, went to Eintracht Frankfurt, won the Europa League, left with them in the Champions League because he didn't get back to the market, came into Crystal Palace and delivered 2 pieces of silver when we've never had any before. So he doesn't really have a hole on his CV, and he will be career-minded. At the moment, his aims and ambitions match up perfectly with those of Crystal Palace. And for now, that's great. But in the fullness of time, and I've made this point previously, it's a little bit of a strange point to make now because the season's underway. But before a ball was kicked, if Mikel Arteta at the end of this season had sort of fallen away and Arsenal would finish 5th and he was going to be relieved of his duties, you would assume that Oliver Glasner would be amongst the prime candidates to be a contender for that job. And that will be the case across the summer as long as he doesn't completely fall flat on his face with Palace this season. I mean, people are talking about Manchester United at the moment with the Ruben Amorim situation. I'm not sure, and it sounds a little bit outlandish given the fact that it's Manchester United, but I'm not sure that Manchester United in their current guys have the same pool that they did 5 or 10 years ago. And with him having such a high stock, I just think he realises that, come the end of the season, he's probably going to have his pick of some top jobs. And if he does move on, then I think Crystal Palace fans will be pretty philosophical because he will have seen out the contract that he signed. He will have won us a couple of pieces of silverware, potentially more at the end of this season. There's a potential if we finish 6th or 7th and win the Conference League that he does sign a new deal, but I wouldn't at this moment in time put it above about 10 or 15%.
Well, speaking of potentially winning the Conference League, I appreciate, the cast going against you and you being demoted into that competition. Perhaps wasn't what you were hoping for, but there is one silver lining to that cloud, which is possibly more likely to go and win it. Saying that, I think your fixtures are quite tough, actually. When I've seen your fixture, wow, that was a lot harder than I remember when we were in the Conference League. But are you going to win it?
Well, I mean, so the first game is Dynamo Kiev, as I was just saying to you before we went live. That game is actually taking place in eastern Poland, and it's about 5 or 10 miles away from the Belarusian border, where I believe Poland have amassed the largest group of soldiers since the Cold War, because Russian drones keep on flying over into Lublin. But, Dynamo Kiev, as far as I'm aware, were in the Champions League qualification rounds at the start of this summer. They got knocked out of them, went down into the Europa League qualification rounds, and then got demoted from there into the Conference League. So they are a team on paper that should be very tough to beat. We've also got to take on AZ Alkmaar at home. You know about them. We've got Strasbourg away, who are basically just Chelsea reserves now. So in terms of 3 sides out of 6 that you wouldn't want to face in the Conference League, you could name those. The other 3, I think it's Koops, who are Estonian. We've got AEK Larnaca, and Shelbourne is the other away game, which obviously, it's got some spice to it because it's an English-Irish game. But, you can't really tell how that's going to pan out. I would like to think that we could get through in the top 8 of the competition. And if you do that, you don't have to go into the playoff round and you make it straight to the round of 16. And undeniably, if we get into the round of 16 with Oliver Glasner's record in cup competitions, you'd have to fancy it. But there's a degree of luck with squad fatigue and injuries and everything else. At the moment, it's all sort of stretched out in front of us, and there's a pathway there to just enjoy it. So hopefully we get more than the 3 away days and we can go on a prolonged European tour and see where it leads us.
Yeah, I'll say it, Dan. I think you'll win it. I think you will. I hope you do as well. I've got nothing against Crystal Palace, and I think every English team in that competition should
almost automatically become favourites, don't they?
Yeah. And I think you should expect to go on and win it as well. When you look at the budget you've got and your squad that you've got compared to the equivalent of the other countries as well, it's quite. There's a big difference, and we breezed through the Conference League. Even when we played Alkmaar in the semi-final, which on paper felt like a difficult fixture, I thought we handled it perfectly well. I thought the occasion was we handled it well, the team handled it well, and we got through into the final quite comfortably. And in the final, we weren't great, but
you still got a job done, yeah.
Yeah,
and Fiorentina are in it again. They seem to be in every year. Fiorentina,
yeah, and can't win it, so that tells you what you need to know about them, possibly. I think you'll win it. Honestly, I think you'll win it. I think there's a chance that all 3 tournaments of European football will be won by an English club this year. Yourselves, Villa, although they need to get their finger out first, and then we've obviously got 6 teams in the Champions League and good teams as well.
Through sheer weight of competition, you'd expect us to be in the quarters.
Even just law of averages, you could have 4 English teams in the quarterfinals of the Champions League or something like that. So I think the Premier League are in a good position, I think, to do well in European football this season. Right, from your team to my team now, what's your thoughts on West Ham?
I mean, I have a genuine sense of sympathy. I have done for quite some time. This isn't a new thing for me. I do feel that West Ham fans largely are a bit misunderstood. This suggestion that because you've got a European trophy in relatively recent history and you've got a big ground and you're in the Premier League and you pay big wages, that you haven't got anything to be miserable about. It's not the case. I say it a lot, and I'll reiterate the point again. Football clubs and the happiness of football fans with their clubs are all about the direction of travel. It doesn't matter whether you're in the Premier League or you're in League One. If you can sense that everyone is pulling in the same direction, that you feel as though you're onto something, that you're tactically cohesive, that the board and the manager are on the same page, that the players are playing for the badge, that the fans enjoy going to games, it doesn't matter what division you're in. It doesn't matter where you are. It's the journey. And West Ham at the moment are stuck in neutral, not even first gear. And with the stadium situation, I understand that it's a conversation that is spoken about ad infinitum, but there's no path out of that. It's not a case of, we just need to knock one stand down, or we just need to get some concessions in there, or we need to do this. You don't like it. You've never liked it. And it's becoming the sort of watchword for your ownership, or at least it has been that. The gigantic beer garden sits there at one of the ends of the stadium. The apathy from the owners towards your fans, the lack of concession pricing that you had to fight tooth and nail for, the football on the pitch is almost incidental in most senses. Obviously, it's something that can paper over the cracks, and you can look towards that Nottingham Forest victory a couple of weeks back as an example of that. But overall, it feels like the direction of travel is one that's alienating fan bases from numerous generations, and I'm not quite sure how you arrest that slump, really.
In regards to Graham Potter, he's under a bit of pressure coming into this one, Dan. There's some suggestions that if we lose, you might be for the chop kind of thing. What's your thoughts on Potter and Potter as manager of West Ham United?
Well, I think the last time I came on, or at least I came on shortly after Graham Potter had arrived. I can't remember when it was exactly in terms of Palace.
It was January, so it would have been literally one of his first league games would have been against yourselves.
We had a conversation about him, and I said, and it's ironic really, because I said that his football does take a while to sort of take hold. And in many senses, you haven't even seen that really. It's quite a long time to be in a Premier League job. I know it doesn't sound like it if you zoom out over sort of 10, 20 years, but he's had enough time to put his stamp on that team now, and it quite clearly isn't there. And if it is there, that's an even bigger problem. I never felt as though he was a West Ham manager. I look at someone like a Paolo Di Canio or a Slaven Bilic, someone with a bit of chaos to them, and it feels more likely that West Ham fans will warm to that. I know there are these noises today about Slaven Bilic potentially returning. It just makes more sense to me. Graham Potter is very methodical. He keeps his emotions in check. He doesn't want to ruffle feathers, and that's all well and good if you're winning games, but if you're not, then the pressure will come. I know he said, I think, that it's not a must-win, but for me, as soon as a manager says it's not a must-win, it sort of suggests that it is, because to say the opposite would be signing your own death warrant. So, I don't know. Obviously, from our point of view, it's a potential moment to seize, the opportunity and take 3 points. But it would be very Palace and West Ham for us to be on a 16-game unbeaten run and get beat by you. And it would be very similar for you to be in the doldrums in the way that you are and suddenly snap that. So, I don't want to count my chickens, but it certainly on a long-term basis doesn't particularly feel like you're going to be in a good place under him, whatever happens.
Yeah, I think it would have been typical of West Ham 10, 15 years ago. Now it feels a bit different now. I don't normally I used to have that. Hey, it's going to be like us to rock up and beat the informed team, and then we'll lose to the out of form team. I think we just lose to the informed team and the out of form team now.
Are you genuinely worried about relegation?
Well,
is it a thing?
Yeah, I am. Part of my saving grace with Potter, I actually thought we'd be okay under Potter this season. I thought it would be boring. I thought he'd be boring, and I thought the football would be boring. But I thought we'd be all right. I think we'd pick up enough points and we'd finish. Well, I predicted 15th, I think. I thought
nice
we'll
and rosy prediction.
Yeah, we'll finish in the bottom half of the table, but not in a relegation scrap. But we'll be just above it for the entire season. And we're not even that. We're not even good enough to be boring. And my one saving grace is that I think they would sack him if they had to, because Sullivan wasn't keen on Potter in the first place. I don't really think he's that keen, because he's not keen on him. I think he'd be willing to sack him. So I thought, well, as long as we get the next guy right, they'll keep us up. I don't think we've got a bad set of players. I think if you're an average manager, I think you'd be able to keep this group of players up.
Yeah, they could finish 13th.
Yeah, so you don't even need to be a good manager. You just need to be competent. And I've seen the links to Bilic and it's in Sean Dyche, and I thought, bloody hell, I'm not sure they're the ones that's going to come in and keep us up, though. I know what you're saying about the character of Slav and stuff, but I'm unconvinced. So my saving grace, if you like, which is, well, we'll sack him and get someone in to save us. The names that we're being linked to, I'm not convinced would. So, yeah, I'm worried about relegation, Dan. I was going to ask you, do you think West Ham will get relegated?
I don't think you will. I mean, look, we're very, very early in the season. So, for me, it doesn't particularly lend itself to being a content creator. But I don't think you can make solid predictions until you're sort of 10 games in anyway. That said, you look at the way that Sunderland have started, Burnley, Leeds, they've all picked up points. So that recent trend in the Premier League of the 3 promoted sides just looking out of their depth, you go back to Luton or to Ipswich or to Southampton, and it felt as though you could sort of phone in as an established Premier League side for the most part. I'm not sure that's going to be the case this season. I mean, Sunderland played us at Selhurst last week, and I appreciate their goalkeeper was man of the match, but they were very good. They were very well drilled. They physically matched us. They countered our press. They didn't look like a tactically naive team, and they've already picked up 7 points. That's not a fluke. So if Leeds can get their home form going, if Burnley can be defensively solid, and I know obviously they lost to Liverpool, but only via a complete brain fart from Hannibal at the end there, they would have had a point against the reigning Premier League champions otherwise. I feel that is a potential spanner in the works for the Wolves and the West Hams, the teams that previously would have been able to, as I say, sort of phone it in and pick up 40-odd points and be fine. Obviously, it may well be that this is just a purple patch, but I don't think it is. I think you're going to see a more tightly packed bottom 8, and hopefully Palace don't even skirt with that. We've started relatively well. You always have to look over your shoulder because of fixture congestion, and we got through in the League Cup. It might be a bit of a problem for us going forward with the European games and the FA Cup and everything else. But at the moment, you're riding the wave. From West Ham's point of view, if you don't pick up points between now and the next international break, then you'd look at it and think, well, hang on, who were the 3 teams below us? But as I say, there's still a hell of a long way to go.
Do you want me to tell you who our fixtures are before the next international break?
Yeah, do that.
Yourselves at our place, Everton away, Arsenal away.
That's not great, is it?
It's not
You
great.
basically need to beat us, don't you?
Yeah. And post international break, it's game on because we've got Brentford at home, Newcastle at home, and then we also play, I think, Leeds and Burnley in that category. We've got like 3 relegation teams in that group.
Wisdom hints that you should let Potter be the human shield until those 3 games are out of the way, pull the trigger at the start of the international break, and then hit the ground running.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. But anyway, let's turn our attentions to Saturday then, Dan. How do you see this one going?
Look, it's so difficult. I was on a Sunderland preview pod the other day, and he was talking about how optimistic they were, how their summer business had been good, how they picked up points. And then he sort of finished with, we're good, but I still don't think we're good enough to beat Palace. And for me, that is a mad thing to hear, because we are now morphing into a team that people genuinely respect. And, you know, we saw it with Millwall on Tuesday at Selhurst. I know it's a championship side, they would sit in anyway, but we saw it with Sunderland, we saw it with Fredrikstad. These teams are coming and they're thinking, we can't open up against Palace because they'll pick us apart. And that is a new challenge for us. You know, we've done the plucky underdogs that no one expects to be as good as we are, and then we go and turn you over. It's a completely different thing on picking locks against low blocks. And I'm not suggesting, it's ironic because tactically, the best way that Graham Potter and West Ham could approach this on Saturday is to sit in a low block, to frustrate us and try and hit us on the break. Because if you force us into having to force the game, you will get opportunities. I'm just not sure that West Ham can do that, given the planned protests, given the unrest, given Graham Potter's job security. If you come out, sit deep and concede, then the writing's on the wall, whatever, which ironically plays into our hands, because if you come at us and we pick you off, we win anyway, or likely do anyway. So it's sort of a rock and a hard place situation. I will never predict that Crystal Palace are going to go away from home in the Premier League and win, because it's still an incredibly hard thing to do. And you've got quality players, whether you feel like it at the moment or not. They are players that can win you games. Bowen, Somerville, you know, you look at Paqueta, there are individuals there that can provide moments of magic. I would suggest that a point is the most likely outcome. I mean, we've had 3 draws to start the Premier League season anyway, and we want to keep this unbeaten run going as best as we can. If we do get 3 points, then fantastic. But if you look at, for example, the Aston Villa victory, we won that game 3-0. We created more chances against Sunderland. So it's not linear. It's not a case of, oh, they were amazing against Villa, they weren't good against Sunderland. You've got to take your chances when they come. And Mateta isn't really doing that at the moment. He missed an absolute sitter against Millwall on Tuesday. He looks knackered. He's playing every single week, and you know he's going to be playing again on Saturday with no rest. So that potentially is a recipe for disaster there in terms of injury or form. I don't know. I feel like we'll be competitive and we'll be tactically solid, because we always are. But whether we get 3 points is another matter entirely.
Your set pieces worry me, Dan. We're crap at defending corners. I like Chris Richards attacking.
He's unbelievable in the air, mate.
Yeah, I rate him highly, followed by Lacroix, and they worry me a little bit. Even Chris Richards' long throws are going to concern me. I'm nervous defending corners at the minute, so that might be an avenue of success. But anyway, it's crystal ball time, Dan. You don't get to come on here and leave without making a prediction. So may I push you for a little bit of a fun score prediction?
I'll go 1-1, mate. I think I feel like we'll probably go in front, and then after all your fans have come back in after the protest, that you might push on in the last 20 and get an equaliser. I can't predict us to win because it just feels alien still. Maybe if we go on and we're top 6 at Christmas, I might start to change. But I'm still in that mindset of, no, hang on a minute, we don't do that here. So.
Yeah. Possibly the worst result for West Ham. A draw. It is.
It keeps him there.
Yeah, when we get the points, but a draw means he keeps the job.
Yeah.
But Dan, thank you so much. You guys at home, if you enjoyed this video, you probably know who he is. If not, it's HLTCO on Twitter. I'll put the links in the description below. And I personally recommend his Patreon. I've been his. He didn't ask me to promote it. I'm promoting off my own back. I've been a Patreon member of his for a long, long time, since he started doing Patreon, and I highly recommend it. It's not just Crystal Palace stuff. There's 2 podcasts. There's Palace, and then there's football. So even if you don't like Palace, there's still podcast every day for you on there to listen to about football. So I'll put the link to that in the description below as well. Dan, thank you. Pleasure.
No worries,
as always,
mate.
best of luck for the rest of the season. And you guys at home, before you disappear, drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. It's going to be Hammers Chat. Catch you in a bit.